Yeah.
you can continue talking. I'm just telling you that we're officially live now. So
Oh yeah, that's cool.
you gotta stop, bashing all those people that you don't like.
No, no, there's not many people I don't like.
You guys are just full of love, full of EtherNode love. What's
Yeah.
so what's new in the hardware space, man, for blockchain? That's unique. There aren't many people doing that, right? Like the only other than you guys in Casa, I don't know that many. I know there's like a few like GPS tracker devices that you can mine coins by moving around. Is there anybody
Yeah,
else in the space?
No, I haven't really looked into those. I've heard about those miners you're talking about. I haven't really looked into them, and no, I guess yeah, like you said, Casa Node is only other one that I really know of that does anything with anything blockchain type nodes or anything. So I don't know about.
There are a couple of the other companies that are putting together some hardware solutions for nodes. Um, maybe not exactly the approach that we're taking, but there's a couple of projects out there. I mean, we're not the only ones with the idea.
Yeah, I think. Oh, definitely not.
But is there anybody else doing it for Ethereum and Ethereum Classic?
Not Ethereum Classic. Ethereum has a little bit of support in that area.
Like like an who's doing it? Because I only know Infura as far as like the main like node provider, and they're only cloud.
So I'm thinking more in the lines of like a personal blockchain hardware node. And off the top of my head, I think EtherNode is building something.
EtherNode.
And maybe like there are a couple of other projects off the top of my head. I don't remember, but I could we could put up some links or something. I can send you some info.
Nah, screw those guys. I'm not here. I don't want you to kill those people. I'm just curious about the space because like, there's not many that right? Like, and I happen to know Casa because their marketing is on point. Actually, they just released this thing called Node Heartbeat or something, and then Satsback. So this is what they're doing. You connect to Tor, right? So they're not grabbing your IP address, you're private. And if you do like a check-in, like this heartbeat check-in 5 times a week, they'll give you 10,000 Satoshis, which, okay, what is that? Like $1?
Really? But what, and it all goes to that Tor net?
Excuse me?
It all goes through that Tor net?
Yeah, like they actually, I think they explicitly want you to connect to Tor. So it's all private, and the idea is to promote people to have node uptime and to like run nodes.
Yeah, incentivizing uptime, pretty much the idea there. And I think we probably have talked about this some in the past, right? But
oh wow, yeah, a lot.
We've had a number of different ideas. When you start going down the path of how do you incentivize people to run a node? What benefit do they get out of it? What's the purpose in the first place? I think there's a lot of disconnect. Most people don't see the value, or just not inherently. So there's sort of an education element to it. But we pretty much determined that it was fundamentally unviable to try to incentivize running a node with distribution of tokens, infrastructure and protocol level kind of hardware stuff. Like it really needs to have its own value proposition that stands alone. And so that's been the approach that we've taken, is in trying to develop tools and utilities that make running a node just a simple value proposition for even a standard user to understand.
So like outside of the the EtherNode model, right? Like, just if we're thinking about like the way Bitcoin operates, which is node operators do it without any incentive, right? Like, are you guys
not really, not without any incentive, right? Because so I basically kind of like think about this, you know, and even now with MetaMask allowing you to, you know, put in your own node endpoint and whatnot, right? A lot of Bitcoin people are realizing that, you know, if they purchase something like a Casa Node, for instance, or they know how to run their own node in their own house on their own hardware, all the wallets and everything that they use to interact with Bitcoin is right off of their node in their house, you know, or wherever, right? So right there, that's huge value. And, you know, I think on the Bitcoin side, that's a little bit more under, you know, like, I don't know, I think that, I don't know what the word I'm looking for right this second.
Probably more people who understand it from the Bitcoin's perspective than maybe with Ethereum.
Right.
And I don't know exactly why that is. It's probably
I don't get it either.
Probably due mostly to the demographics of the adherents, really, and you know the people who are, you know.
Or maybe it has to do with the size. Like, don't you need a lot more space to run an Ethereum node?
Go ahead, Ski.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely do, right? And you know, I guess, you know, not many people are really willing to want to, you know, give up resources on the computer that they use every day for work or whatever, so they can be syncing a blockchain in the back just so they can send some Bitcoin or receive some Bitcoin once a week, you know, or whatever, at least not at this point, right? And with Ethereum, it's a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely coming up with like light nodes now, you know, that feature is getting a lot better too, and full nodes. But, you know, honestly, at the end of the day, it would be cool if everybody at least had one full archive node, and they wouldn't have to worry about giving up like 2 terabytes of their hard drive on their personal computer or whatnot, right? And wait about a week for it to sync up too as well, right? So
So
yeah,
like,
it definitely takes a little bit more resources.
You know, one of the things that I've been discussing a lot with people is this concept that, you know, in the early days when Bitcoin started and where we are today, it's possible for the network to run with non-incentivized nodes. Even though node count is going down on Bitcoin, the idea is that there's enough people who realize the security benefit of running their own node. And then there's also this altruistic kind of effect where it's like, hey, I want to support the network, I'm going to run a node. But then there's a lot of new projects coming out that have incentivized node structures, right? Where a portion of every block reward goes to node operators. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think that that's like a no-go? Does it depend? Is there a certain flavor you're into?
So I would think about it this way. You know, no one's paying you to put a modem in your home. Actually, you're going to pay someone else to provision that address on the public network and provide you with bandwidth and service. So, and the reason why we're willing to even pay to run a modem to connect to the internet is because it provides us inherent value.
Right.
First of all, who would pay people to run modems? You know, to put a modem in their home, and like there is no central entity to the internet that would provide.
But you'd have no other way to connect to the internet without a modem, right? I mean, how else would you connect?
No, you don't. And you know, equally, you don't have a way to trustlessly connect to a public blockchain network unless you're running a node either.
Right. It's that key differentiation where you have no access to the system without a modem, but you have access to a blockchain without a node, just not trustlessly.
Well, through a third party, sure.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like
API endpoint,
it sounds like your answer is basically, you know, you shouldn't have to incentivize nodes. Like, there's such a strong value case for people to run their own nodes. Why would you have to incentivize it?
Actually,
Well,
I think
if that blockchain, first, let's say the said blockchain you're going to run a node for really does bring that value to you itself, then you shouldn't have a problem running a node for that blockchain as well, right?
if we're having to incentivize people to run blockchain nodes, it's because blockchain isn't, or running a node does not provide inherent value commensurate to the cost.
Right.
And hassle. And that's the fundamental problem is, that value is not inherent at this level at this point. So, in lieu of trying to build a scheme to provide an incentive structure, our focus has been on developing some of the utilities that you can utilize when you run a node that make it more advantageous for people to run them. And if you're able to say like our vision for the Nkeep is that this is a base that you put in your home. It's connected. Currently we still have to connect through public internet to create this whole network anyway. So we're not peer-to-peer mesh network or anything like that. That would be an ideal. But for now, you put this behind your modem, and this is a blockchain gateway, and you host nodes for different chains. That gives you a network address on those within those networks, and then it allows you to do things like send and receive transactions, or interact directly with the chain. Now, that doesn't have a lot of utility for most people right now either. Without applications that run that allow you to utilize that connection, it's still just sort of pedantic, and you'll still only kind of find zealots running nodes. What you need is applications that leverage the fact that you have a node in ways that provide enough value to you that makes it worth running it.
And there actually, it's a good thing you bring that up, because there actually is many applications out there right now, but because, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all, but because there's also so many like centralized ways that provide you that access to that blockchain, it's kind of masked most of the time, right? Like, if you have a if you fire up your MetaMask to connect your wallet through it, it shows you to pick a network. Well, somebody is running a node behind that link for you to connect to that blockchain, but also it gives you an option to put in, for instance, IP address or whatever, a host name, if you're hosting your own node, right? So, a lot of people don't think about that, but there's also a lot of wallet softwares out there. Like, I believe my crypto wallet is one of them that allows you to put in your own host name too if you're hosting your own node, right? So there is, for instance, software like that out there that it kind of goes unnoticed, and for obvious reasons. It's that trying to have that entry level, make it much easier for people to start interacting with the blockchains and stuff like that. But they all have those options built in to do that as well.
Yeah, the strongest argument I've heard so far on like running a node outside of the incentivized model and the altruistic reasoning is businesses are going to be running it, right? Because they need to be in control of their money. If you've only got, let's say, $1,000 worth of crypto, you're comfortable just, leaving it on somebody else's wallet or an exchange or whatnot. But as that number goes up, the need to run your own node just increases exponentially. So I get that, but I guess that's the challenge today, is that the user friendliness. We're still in a place where all of this is, you have no idea how many times I talk to people. I convince them that, hey, Bitcoin, you gotta own something, and they're like, okay, so how do I buy it? Like, we're just so far away from a place where it's an everyday user. But I think that the hardware world for blockchain has more than just maybe the nodes. I mean, you guys were also in the GPS space. You're still doing that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
totally.
what was the name? What was it? Sky Tracker?
Geosky GPS.
Geosky. Geosky GPS. So
Yeah.
do you envision like connecting Geosky to the blockchain, you know, to a blockchain or to what you're doing with EtherNode?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what led us into blockchain in the first place, was our research for new technologies that we could apply in that industry. That's an industry where we work with so mobile networks all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the satellite networks, and then a lot of personal or at least private, sometimes business data. And some of it, can potentially be, I guess, extra valuable to some people. And so
I'm gonna find this other, what's it called? This other blockchain, like whatever these GPS guys that mine. I gotta find out what it is. I'm sorry for cutting you off. I just want to figure it out while we're talking.
yeah, no worries. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we started, and we looked a few years ago when we started into this. We kind of looked at the condition of the technology and recognized that it wasn't really in a position to start developing production type of either hardware or software solutions, at least specific to our industry. So we looked at it and identified that a lot of these network infrastructure components were kind of missing or lacking, and and there's also some of the challenges of trying to scale things like data transactions across these public networks. It's just cost prohibitive, and in most cases really, really unnecessary to be actually storing data. Like these devices produce
like
data,
petabytes, like huge amounts of data.
Yeah, it's high frequency and usually not a large payload, but it just, the volume of the transactions would make it just incredibly prohibitive. So we started trying to understand how we could utilize different tools. Some of them are specific blockchain tools. Some of them are things that have been around for 10 or 15 years, but things that we can use together to start piecing together kind of a stack of technologies that would allow us to do to build and develop out blockchain tracking systems in a way that's viable, and really try to leverage the aspects of blockchain that make sense and bring value to that situation, and do so without incurring a lot of extra costs. And
like,
so
as part of that being an Oracle system, like, because that's the first thing that comes to mind, right? Is how, if we can accurately take the location data, that's good as an Oracle, right? To prove.
Well, it depends, right? Because location data could be a little edge device that has a little GPS chip built into it, that collecting GPS data and then sending it over let's say like a 5G network back to your node, for instance, to record that data into like a proof of authority blockchain running on your hardware, So you don't really need an Oracle then.
No, what I'm thinking about is just like how ultimately you can use these devices to prove that certain things are at certain places. So like for logistics, right? If you have a device, a GPS device connected to the blockchain, or am I completely off on what I'm saying?
I mean, you can verify location data the way it is right now. I mean, that's not a concern. It's just we're storing it in a centralized database that we operate, and with backups and some redundancy and, you know, all those kind of things, failovers and stuff. But, you know, it certainly doesn't make sense to take the kind of data that these devices produce and hash it into Ethereum Classic blockchain or Ethereum or, you know, really any other public network.
So the devices stay the same. The GPS devices stay the same. It's just that instead of saving it to your own database, you're saving it to the blockchain.
Yeah. So for instance, go ahead, Ski.
Oh, no. Yeah, go ahead. I was just saying, just agreeing. Yeah.
You know, for instance, like Ski was saying, you take an edge device that has the sensors and everything required to, you know, log all of the data you need in a moving vehicle. And if you run like a light whisper client on there, then, I mean, or a whisper client, which is a very lightweight client to begin with, then you can connect it to a proof of authority network, basically provision the address for the device and point that data that it produces. And you can still send it across, you know, a GSM mobile network. But it literally just, you know, it sends directly to the node address that you pointed to. And we can take that data when it arrives and decode it and plug it into a database that we're running, you know, in a distributed network of nodes or whatever. And then if we need to pull data out of there and somehow validate it into a public chain for users to preserve or view or access or whatever, then we're able to do that, you know, on a defined basis instead of every single transaction that comes along. We can snapshot things, or we can choose specific data that we want to put into, you know, a public context. But the majority of the data doesn't need to be there, and it costs way too much.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly. Yeah.
God, so a lot of these solutions that I'm talking about, you know, again, the location data and you know, revolutionizing this need for big data to be on the blockchain. It sounds like it's useless just because it's just so much. There's no need to put it all there.
No, but you're also think about it like this. It's not, we can't say blockchain in general, right? Because, you know, for instance, what if you have an idea where, like Aaron said, that edge device transmits its GPS location data, you know, and that device is attached to some container that you're tracking, and it transmits that data with a whisper message, and then you have a node somewhere listening for that whisper message, picks it up, and that node also listening for that whisper message is a proof of authority type of blockchain, and it records it on there. So kind of like Kadi, right? Kadi is used as a test net for Ethereum Classic, but it's a proof of authority blockchain. Set up a private proof of authority blockchain just for all your GPS data for whatever, and then think of, instead of like now you use an explorer to search for different addresses and transactions, right? On that thing, you'll have an explorer that you search for different GPS data or different dates, right? And then, you know, it's like you're literally using the blockchain, you know, right now to store your GPS data in almost a, you know, permissioned, immutable way, right? And it's just that much easier to be.
Is there anything else other than Kadi that you use for proof of authority?
Kadi's just a test net, so like you wouldn't want to put anything in there, but it gives you a place where you can deploy, you know, contracts and test them out. But, you know, like in the EtherNode NUI interface, you can spin up your own proof of authority test net right there, and with a couple clicks of a button, and, you know, then you're in a position to start authorizing devices to be part of that network.
Yeah, for example.
But so yeah, but like I'm like, you know, just for name,
blockchain,
you know,
but it's not a public blockchain at all.
Yeah, is there like a public one on Ethereum or Ethereum Classic or a different chain that you're using or looking at?
No, so what we would do in a situation like that is, we've built this API that to allow you to build applications that run that can access or search these nodes.
Yeah.
And so you can build software basically and run a node for each. If you're running a node for, say, Ethereum Classic and a node for Dean's tracker chain, then you can build software that can access your own private Dean's tracker chain like it's its own database, and display that data to users or whatever, or then take some of that data and write it to a public chain.
Yeah.
But you're not taking all of those transactions produced by all those devices that are, that's all getting logged in Dean's tracker chain.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
That is economically viable. That's a good way to use a blockchain to prove your data's viability. What else are you using it for if not that? And so you do that with your data, but that's all a private chain that you maintain and you have control over, say, like the transaction costs and things like that.
Oh, look, I'm upside down.
Hey, Spider-Man!
Hold on.
Are you?
We'll figure it out one of these days.
I have no idea what I just did now, but there is a screwdriver.
There you go. That's a real tool man's workshop right there. He's got his notes and a screwdriver. That's all he needs. I want to ask you guys, what's the experience been since leaving ETCLabs? Like you were one of the shining examples of a strong project. A lot of people knew, what you guys were up to. You went in there, you had the idea, you came out, you had a node, a beautiful hardware node. We should put some pictures, share the links later. What's it been ever since then? Are you still in touch with ETCLabs? What's the experience been since leaving the incubator?
Still got some hardware nodes.
Hey, I love it.
You can preview today.
Here's a prototype of what the final production ones look like.
There you go. Yeah.
A little bit different.
So that's the final production quality one, and the one that Mache had was the prefab version. Got it.
And technically, this is a prototype. Also, it's not a final production process, but yeah, we built these around some commonly available hardware, and then developed essentially the case for it. And the case is it is very cool, but it's also kind of cost prohibitive to get into production at scale. And so,
people don't realize it's everybody's like, oh, why don't you put more of this, more of that? It's like, do you realize just the case alone costs this much?
Well, people, and then we got to, exactly. And then, we try to house some really viable hardware in there too as well, right? So we can support these nodes, and we literally build the case around the hardware,
Yeah, there was nothing out there that really quite fit the profile that this has with the NVMe adapter and everything. So figured out maybe ski, but
it's like put the camera on the node. If you put a camera on the node, then you can just flip.
Okay, if we could order 5,000 of these cases right now, then the cost would be pretty minimal. The problem is we don't have the orders to fill that kind of a stocking order.
That's not something that you could have projected, right? We were all under the impression that there was going to be a very strong demand for the hardware node. As you guys discussed before, the Bitcoin and the Ethereum audience seem to be different. What I want to ask now is, you guys are moving into the enterprise. What are your thoughts on enterprise blockchain needs? What's the industry that you think, or you're hearing so far has the most demand for these kind of solutions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are
Yeah,
there any clients that are there any companies that that you can mention, or like a particular, someone we would know that would be what, these kind of guys, somebody, I know nothing about the space to know what an enterprise blockchain requirement is.
Yeah, I think I had the opportunity to attend a couple of conferences and stuff where it was a topic, a feature topic amongst a couple of other sort of new emerging technologies. And my takeaway is that many people, the majority of people in some of these large enterprise settings, they are kind of, I would say, accepting blockchain as a necessary part of the future stack, while at the same time not really having any idea why. And there's a lot of focus on, people talk about IoT, and IoT is really broad, but hugely impactful, especially as it continues to be integrated more and more into our daily lives. And so that gets some attention, and people are talking about 5G and the portended benefits of upgrading the network and having this so much greater access to speed and bandwidth, and then especially in the enterprise space, there's a lot of focus on they call AI, which is different implementations of machine learning, mostly focused on repeat process automation and identifying all kinds of trends and stuff like that, which is hugely valuable. And I think in many ways probably a little bit more understandable or relatable to many people. And blockchain seems to be what they want to use to try to validate all of this data,
right.
Which is really, I think, that's the value proposition for using blockchain in an enterprise setting, is just verifying and validating the integrity of the data that you're using to base so many decisions on in your business, or tracking products, or just your personality, or
like Aaron was saying about verifying data, there is actually a big banking company or bank in Poland that actually use, I believe, don't quote me on this one, but I'm pretty sure it's an Ethereum-based blockchain, right, that they use right now for verifying data. And I think right now they're using it for tracking documents to verify exactly what date and time documents were signed. I think that's where it's at right now. But yeah, kind of like Aaron said, that's another big thing right there about storing this data, whether it's a public or private type blockchain, is being able to verify some of that information that's stored right there.
I think between the fact that you can, timestamp things with authority, reference them with confidence, and also store it in a state that's distributed across multiple machines, across different locations, blah blah blah, in a way that it's constantly synced. And there's a lot of resources, especially at the enterprise level, go into redundancy and backup and validation and stuff like that. So I think that's where the value is in implementing blockchain into enterprise scenarios.
And now, do you think, based on that they're going to be rapidly kind of adopting blockchain in comparison to retail? And to further expand, we were talking about nodes, right? is are the hardware nodes really going to end up being first, like these massively beefy, you know, high throughput, large storage capacity?
In an enterprise setting, you just use a server, or an array of servers, or whatever you need, really.
So there's not going to be it won't be a dedicated, like, no one's going to be producing the mega node. It's just going to end up being a
you don't need to, I mean, you could specify hardware and spec it, you know, specifically because you're using it for a node, but it's not going to look or feel dissimilar to what you do today when you set up a server, you know, on a rack in somebody's, you know, with some host.
So the hardware node space really is dedicated to the home use, smaller, like, not this like huge requirement, hardware requirement device.
Well, it really depends what you're doing, and you know, it depends if you're going to be just running for your enterprise, right? I mean, obviously, if they're going to be dealing with public blockchain stuff too, they'll probably want to run their own public blockchain nodes as well as they're going to want to run. But yeah, kind of like Aaron said, right? Hardware is hardware, right? Your processor and your hard drive and whatever, and your network card in there and whatnot. It doesn't really give a damn if you're running a blockchain on it or if you're running an Apache server on it or whatever, you know, for web hosting or whatnot, right? But the software and the operating system, for instance, that you put on there will care, you know? So,
right.
You know, that's where our second set of tools comes in that we've also been developing and releasing. It almost all of it is pretty much out now on our GitHub pages. Is our all the software that we're using on our hardware nodes is all open source that people can use right now too as well. And
you
run
showed
it
me
too.
a bit of that, dude. What are you most excited about in the newest release? Like, from a user's perspective, what is it like? Damn, now I can do.
Well, so I mean, the latest thing that I'm kind of excited about really is, you know, we built this, we call an API, and we've had some videos about it a few weeks ago, and basically that's a whole JSON RPC API, you know, build on top of Pristine using OpenRPC and whatnot. And you know, it's cool because it lets you create and manage nodes utilizing Docker containers and stuff like that, but you had to build, or you had to know how to use web technologies or whatnot, or whatever you would do to do API calls, right, to use it for anything. So now we got this NUI that's basically a desktop application that you can download now. And if you're running your own copy of an API somewhere, or even let's say you purchase our own hardware node, you can plug in your own host name into it with the port that NAPI is running, and now you got a whole dashboard for pretty much running your own nodes, managing them. You know, you can create your username and stuff like that. So right out of the box, you know, and you know, as we're building it out right now, we released this release candidate version. It's very simple. It lets you spin up if you have an NAPI running somewhere in Ethereum Classic or Casa Node and whatnot, and manage it and kind of connect to it and whatnot. So yeah, I think that's another like big step, is making all of this is letting people running their own nodes also as user friendly as possible, right?
And this, you know, the same API that allows us to build that interface allows, you know, anybody else to build applications that operate in the same way.
That's what I was gonna say, is that this starts to become like the necessary tool for a dApp developer in the Ethereum family.
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah, I mean, something that's very simple and easy to use, that's reliable. You know, it always works the same. It's very clean, very simple, well documented.
Are you doing a screen share now?
What's that?
Are you doing a screen share from your desktop?
I'm gonna try to maybe see what I could do over here, and I think I might have something going on. So let me see what I got. Give me a second. So let's see, desktop 3, how is this working?
It looks like I'm drinking beer, but it's just watered down iced coffee.
Ah, sure. Always. So this is kind of what I was talking about. So I have a local version of an API running on my desktop computer right now, since I'm kind of just using Linux. But basically, it's got Docker, and the requirement for an API, and like I said, you can check it out, is just having Docker. But yeah, basically, it's running. Right now you can register yourself an account. You can put in where it's running. So like I said, I have it running locally. I have an account created, so kind of log in. And the home version is right now is kind of blank. We'll put some pretty stuff in here. The cool part is this whole node. So right now I have a container running with multigaf in it, and it's running Kali, but I can remove it, add another one pretty much. Like I said, I'm still working out this interface. Probably going to be a lot of update next couple of days, but pretty much by default it does a fast thing. You can enable RPC or WebSocket if you want, but give it a name. So we'll call it like ETC now. And it creates the node, right? So it's right there, net version 1, and probably looking,
This node's running on that hardware node on your desk.
Yeah. So right now I have this connected locally to my hardware node, and this is an app. You can download it. It's running directly off my desktop right now, and it's connected. This app is running off my desktop, connected through my network to the hardware node on my desk. Exactly.
That's sexy, man. That's sexy. Have you guys ever considered like opening this up to like other chains, like I don't know, like EOS or Tezos or just anything else that's a smart contract chain?
So here's the deal, right? So this is on our GitHub pages. This is all open source. You can download it. It's all the documentation. Since we use OpenRPC to build this, obviously all the documentations are right there. So
this where like you can realistically, but this where they go outside of the Ethereum family, right? Because you got this locked down, and what pains me is that it's just like it really is a DApp developer's wet dream what you guys have built, right? Because you've got all the dashboard, you've got all the tools to make it easy. You can build locally, you can spin up a proof of authority node, you can do the multi-get, like you've got all these choices, right? If you were going to, if another chain approached you, right, or like a community came out and was like, we need this ourselves, because there's not this level of development on some of the other chains. Realistically, who's that other chain, right? Like outside of the Ethereum family, who is it that would make sense to have this kind of node?
Here's the deal. If they have their chain.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, right. But here's the deal. If they're running their own blockchain and their chain, obviously they probably have their own node client that they use to sync with that blockchain, right?
Right.
The thing about an API is it spins up blockchain nodes in Docker containers, right? So basically, let me see if I drag this over here to this screen.
Does that mean I could spin up some, like, as long as I have access to the GitHub client for any kind of node client, it doesn't need to be an Ethereum one, I would be able to spin it up?
Well, then what I would, there'll probably be, eventually as I'm working on this, I'll probably make it where it's very easy through the API to add it where it spins up the Docker container for that node that's housed in there. Right now, you'd have to kind of do it programmatically and kind of hard code it in, and then add a UI portion to the API that probably has a button that says over here, like multi-gap or whatever their node net client is, and it'll do it. Because all that really happens right now is, if you see in my right here in my terminal, this is the NAPI running right here. But all that really happens is every time you run it, so see, this is the node we just created. It just spins up a Docker container, right? So literally, if I remove this node right now through this UI, so I stopped NAPI. So
on the Bitcoin side, right? Like I get, I understand the value proposition of me having my own nodes purely from a financial protection and security standpoint. From a DApp developer standpoint, you know, Bitcoin really, the only thing I know about is rootstock. So would this be a convenient tool for me to develop on RSK?
Wait, can you repeat that again?
Like, so I understand very well I think the need to have your own node when you think about the security of your money, right? The security of your money and like your information. I now am trying to wrap my head around the value of having your own local node as a DApp developer. And I see that you've built all these tools that me as a financial concerns person, I wouldn't care about as much, but me, the DApp developer, I care more about those tools, right? Being able to build a dashboard and some of these RPC calls. So on the, you know, when Aaron mentioned, hey, the only other one we're thinking about that would use this would be Bitcoin, I think about, okay, Rootstock is a smart contract kind of application on top of Bitcoin, right? So is that like what you would have in mind? A DApp developer using RSK would be using. You know, I really want to get out there in the world.
All right, so sure, a DApp developer as well, but let me show you this. So over here, let me see, I'm going to spin up an Ethereum Classic node and now have my RPC HTTP endpoint set up, right? And, you know, the thing is with this, so I have to start an API, whatever, starting up quickly. And once it goes, we'll be able to start this node up.
Am I missing the point completely?
No, you're not at all. But let me show you something. So now we got this Ethereum Classic node running, right? So I know this is running on localhost, right? And let me see something over here. So change network, add custom node, and test. And I wonder if I could do, let me see something over here quickly before I put this up on the screen. Custom.
Yeah, make sure you don't put anything that's gonna like be sensitive information. I'm not editing shit.
No, it's okay. Yeah, right.
I'm such a lazy fuck when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Nah, man, don't worry about it, dude. Yeah. This is all running on like development servers and stuff like that, so not that big of a deal. Okay, I'm just.
But like, you guys get, you know, like really what I'm trying to do is like extract how this connects to some of the other chains, right? Like, does this eventually, you know, hit on something like a NeoS or a Tezos or a Neo?
RPC is pretty useful for most of the blockchain clients that are out there.
Right.
And so in that regards, you know, the API should bring utility value to anyone who wanted to use it to build on. Like Ski was saying, right now, it's not built in a way where you can just kind of click a button and add your client for your chain. But you could definitely take all the code from, you know, download it out of GitHub and rewrite in your client.
So the hardware would remain the same. It's just these guys are going to have to make an.
I mean, you don't even need specific. You don't need specific hardware to run any of this stuff.
Yeah, but I want your sexy box.
Well, you should buy one. And
all right.
But you know, but the you know, the point being that, you know, this is something you can execute on an EVM, you know, run it on AWS if you want, and still get the same kind of utilization. Maybe not with quite the same decentralized aspect to it, but you know, from a utility factor, absolutely. Like, it'll run equally as well in either sense.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, like you could take it and strip out, multi-geth and geth, and like we've got Mantis in there. It doesn't have Mantis still doesn't have support for the ARM architecture that we need for the processor and the hardware.
If I'm correct,
the biggest thing is I don't think it doesn't really support
it doesn't have the Atlantis either.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I don't expect that to happen. Are you guys going to Summit?
Yeah.
So let me show you something. I guess over here. So this node is not done syncing, obviously. So it's not really gonna be. You know what? Casa Node sync up really fast, actually. Oh, and this is not running anyway. So basically what I was gonna do, because this node hasn't done finished syncing yet, so it's not gonna show me my wallet transaction right this second, whatnot, but I know that when I spun this node up, and I have a my crypto wallet right here, for instance, right? They have an option over here, because you were asking this, going back to, we were asking about DF developers and stuff like that, why they would need this and want this, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you use my crypto wallet to manage your Ethereum public and private keys and do your transactions and stuff like that, right? So now, every time you run that, right? Give me a second over here. Let me show you. So now every time you try to do anything, when you're connected to the network, when you go over here and you select any of these networks like Ethereum or whatever, right? You're selecting someone's node. Basically, you're connecting to, so like Co-op is running a node over here, right? So, I mean, obviously we all know and love Co-op. So we know we can trust connecting to their node and doing transactions through your wallet, right?
Yeah.
But if you're someone like me that, you never know what might happen, you can, for instance, over here, go to change network and add custom node and put in over here, my node's name, for instance. So you can give that name whatever you want right there. Let me give it a name over here. So just my ETCLabs node, right? And this network over here.
I see RSK over here. Like, is that because you've used it before, or is it built?
No, that's built into. They have this built into over here. So they have this built into here, right? So my network name is Kadi, right? And I don't know, we'll put ETC on there and Kadi chain ID. What is Kadi chain ID? I don't know, actually. Well, you know what? The cool thing over here.
61.
Is it? Did you say 61?
I think that's Ethereum Classic.
No, yeah. Ethereum, yeah, no, 67 is Ethereum Classic.
Oh.
No, 67 is Kadi. Okay. Anyway.
67 is Kadi.
Yeah. Obviously, net version 6. Anyways, I'm just going through this really quickly. I don't think it really, ID 67. This one is chain ID. Okay, so 67. Oh, 6. Sorry, 6. My bad.
So, browsers, we've got this now. We've logged an hour. I want you all to say a nice goodbye and a big smile so I can get you in the picture. And then what we'll do is we're going to continue talking. I'm going to continue recording, but I'll cut it here. That way it's not too long for people. And then later, we can go through and find some gems later. But I'm going to stop it here. And yeah, dude, I appreciate the time. I mean, I'm always learning something new.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us, man.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Dean.
Likewise.